Welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. In each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different, and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, On2Air Backups. On2Air Backups provides automated Airtable backups to your cloud storage for secure and reliable data protection. Prevent data loss and set up a secure Airtable backup system with On2Air Backups at On2Air.com. As one customer, Sarah, said, having automated Airtable backups has freed up hours of my time every other week and the fear of losing anything. Longtime customer David states, On2Air Backups might be the most critical piece of the puzzle to guard against unforeseeable disaster. It's easy to set up, and it just works. Join Sarah, David, and hundreds more Airtable users like you to protect your Airtable data with On2Air Backups. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at On2Air.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air.
Welcome to the Built on Air podcast. We are in episode 4 of season 19. Good to be back with you, myself and Camille, and special guest Joseph. Welcome, Joseph.
Hello. Great to be here.
Good to have you on. We're going to learn more about Joseph and his story later on in the show. But first, I'll walk us through what we're going to be talking about today. As always, we start with our Around the Bases to keep you up to date on all the news and happenings in Airtable and no code. Then a highlight of our sponsor, On2Air Backups. Then we will learn about Joseph Schieffer. Schieffer? How do you say your name?
Schieffer.
Schieffer. All right, Joseph Schieffer, and what he's been up to and his background and story. Then he's going to walk us through a very cool technical use case that he's built with his company. And then a shout out to join our community. And then Camille's going to wrap us up with the new charting options available to us. So with that, Around the Bases. First, let's start off. Wonder if everybody had a fun weekend or week last week with the CrowdStrike fiasco. Here's a little bit of commentary on it in the Built on Air community. Probably didn't affect Camille, I don't think, because it was only Windows. So knowing where Camille works.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, it didn't impact us. We're too small. We don't use CrowdStrike, but I didn't hear any of our clients complaining too much. Maybe because they were quiet and couldn't log on. And I didn't have to travel. Luckily, I know travel was a mess.
I knew a couple of people who were stuck in airports.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. Luckily, I was not traveling, and I didn't hear anything about Airtable. I didn't see any outages specific to this. So I don't think Airtable was impacted. So that was a fun couple days, still recovering from that. Okay, this is a little bit meta. What's new? The What's New page is new. I don't know if you noticed, but they switched to the new interface embed instead of the view embed. And so I came to this site today. I was like, hey, this is new. But there are a couple new. So this, we've talked about, this is a real world example of how you can view the interfaces. You can embed them inside of web pages. So it's kind of cool. You can switch between views here and see what's going on. And you can click on it and it'll have the slide out instead of the pop-up. And so the first thing they talk about is this read-only public share interface pages, which we talked about the last couple of weeks. But here's Airtable eating their own dog food. And then here's a new one that I just noticed today. Checkbox formatting for Boolean formula fields. So if a formula returns a Boolean, you can display it, format it as a checkbox.
I've been to this page and I also remarked upon, they're using the new interface embed, and yet I completely missed this, change that's on this page that I looked at. So,
Yep.
whoops.
And where we first saw it was credit to Olive, who actually does some cool work, very good designer, and mentions this as what's interesting about this is I think this is the first time that could you always return something other than a string or a number? Could you always return a Boolean value?
I don't know. I would have to look at old implementations of things that use the API that were like querying that formula field. I feel like it was always treated as, in Airtable, it was treated as a Boolean, but elsewhere it wasn't.
Yeah. Like I feel like it was converted to a number.
That makes sense.
A 1 or a 0. And the reason why I asked this is because I know I tried when they added the formatting for drop-down fields. I tried to return an array of like string values to see if you could do a multi-select format, and you can't return an array. But now with returning Booleans, I might try it again, or that might be coming next, maybe.
Yeah, I'm wondering what other field types they're considering, because single selecting checkbox are the two at the top of my list to include. But I wonder if there's some other field type that's not coming to mind that would be nice to have as a formula output, because you could always do dates, you could always do numbers, you could always do strings. So those are fine, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this, but the concern is with the API. So we use Stacker a lot, and it doesn't do well with Stacker at this point. So with the single select, so they would need to do some updates on their end and so forth. So I think it is in the API now, but those downstream portals don't necessarily accommodate it yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the meta information, it does tell you what the output format is. So you could, in theory, but it doesn't give you the options with the colors that you configure. That is not available in the API, I don't believe. Maybe it is. Did we look at that?
Airtable, it should be in the API.
So I was able to bring it through on a Stacker portal, but I had to do a hard sync to get it to pull the data. So typically Stacker updates like every few seconds automatically, but for those fields where I had formatted it with that formula and the single select, it wouldn't, when you had the automatic 1 to 2 second update, it didn't work. You had to do like a manual sync to get that to come through. So
that makes sense, because that probably to refresh the meta information. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I think those are the only new items displayed here. In the BuiltOnAir community, we've got our sleuths always finding new features, and Russell and others showcase, and this is what Camille's going to dive deep into, but some cool new features within charts. So excited to look at that. And then Alex also showcased a different version, a different additional. So very cool stuff. And Camille's going to walk us through these charting options. All right. Here's one from Max, who was on the show a couple weeks ago. Anyone seen this error? So trying to invite a new user, getting an error. We're unable to verify your email. You're not signed into the account with the verification link associated with. Somebody mentioned what I would have mentioned, try incognito. You're likely signed in. That didn't work. So the only other thing I could think of is if it's an enterprise account, there are some controls you can configure on who can be added. They have to have like a domain specific email address, or maybe single sign-on is configured and messing things up.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So might be something along those lines. But hopefully, Max, you figure that out. All right. Okay, here's a tool on top of Airtable that is, I'm just blown away by these guys. I'm very impressed. I know Dominic, I've talked to him a few times, and they just produce features like no other. Their developers are just constantly pushing out stuff. So anyways, if you need a form, I highly recommend Fill Out. That's the primary solution. When we sunsetted our form solution at OntoAir, we push people to Fill Out because it's a great product. But I think it's worth giving them a shout out for all the features that they're producing. A bunch more just came out. Calculations, which is interesting. Date calculations is a new one, as well as other integrations to other tools and everything. Okay.
I can also
just
mention one more shout out to Fill Out that came to me this morning. One of our projects uses Fill Out for a form, and they have a person who has visual disabilities, and they said that the form on Fill Out worked perfectly with JAWS screen reader. So, and we've worked with Fill Out on some of these accessibility features. So just a shout out to Dominic and the team for doing that, and that someone using JAWS had a great experience with a Fill Out form.
That's awesome. Yeah, they are top-notch developers for sure. All right. If you are looking for more insight into Airtable, there's a couple webinars coming up. Thought we'd spotlight Tuesday, July 30th. That's next Tuesday. If you want to hear Airtable talk about some of their new features, you can do that. Also, if you want some assistance to get up to speed on app building with using interfaces on July 25th, they will be available, so you can sign up for those on Airtable's website. And Alicia, another shout out to Fill Out. Love their features. Their support is also top notch. Very true. So good group there. Highly recommend. Okay, here's one more. Talking about the Airtable Academy. Is it available for business plans? Rock and Roll CEO is asking on X. Their email support says no. Their Twitter account says yes. And then their Airtable Twitter account says, yes, I can confirm it is accessible to all users. And he says, sorry, that's not correct. I still cannot access it. Then Airtable says, can you reach us? He says, I already did. Your webinar and your DM says it's available for business plans. And now you say it's for everyone, but reached out to them. And then they said it's only available to enterprise. And so it looks like we're not sure who it's available to. I've accessed it through an enterprise account, so I'm not sure.
I've accessed it through a business plan account.
And you can.
Yeah, it worked.
Interesting. So yeah, not sure who that's available to. Let us know in the comments if you can access it through anything other than enterprise. And on that note, Nelson, who we know well, he runs the partner group. So I know I work very closely with Nelson. Huge fan of Nelson. He's been great to work with. And he himself finished the builder certification. So congrats to Nelson on doing that. So yeah, check out the builder course. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, this is just a news alert. And Marvin says, so this is talking about public shared pages, because these pages benefit from no protection access control whatsoever. I'm struggling to think of possible use cases. I think there should be a specific kind of license seat for logged in users who only have read-only access. So there is a read-only Marvin access. This is more for like what we shared with the what's new, if it really is public information that you want to display on that. Okay. Here's a cool application, kind of similar. Basically, what this product is, basefront.app is the URL. If you want to build kind of more advanced, they're kind of taking this public sharing, but making it more customizable. So if you want to share publicly your data from Airtable, but you don't like the options that you can use with like the interface builder, this is a different approach that looks like it will give you more configuration, and it looks like it doesn't have the Airtable branding. So if that's important, you can use this tool, and it'll create like a embed code that you can put into your website. So kind of more.
That's great to know about. We've been in the market for better ways to show data from Airtable. When did this come out?
We saw it on Reddit. I think it's been around a couple months, but it seems like this was a big update. I don't remember it being this fleshed out. Nice.
We'll give it a go.
Okay. There you go. All right. Moving on to the Facebook community. Congratulations to Chris Dancy and Ben Green, Ben Green primarily run this group, both of them. And it looks like they just passed 12,000 users on Facebook. So congrats to them. And also a shout out to, they're also the team behind Daretable coming up. So be sure to get your tickets. Joseph, you going to be at Daretable?
No, but I'd love to.
I like
I read about it in the Facebook group all the time. Like, I think New York can be a little hard to navigate and expensive.
Yeah.
So if it was in a more place I could get in and out quickly, I might do it.
Yeah.
I've got a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
So, but I've got it on my bucket list. So one day.
Very good. Very good. All right. One more also from Chris Dancy, the other team member there behind Facebook, Airtable group and Daretable. I thought this was funny. He says, beware of MIA. MIA means missing in Airtable. And this is, Chris refers to employees who, for whatever reason, will not use the tool. There's some good conversation there talking about it. And this is something that's been on my mind in our agency business. This is something important to us. And we're trying to find ways to help improve adoption and rollout of Airtable implementations, and how to get those laggards on board with adopting Airtable. And for whatever reason, people just have a hesitancy to adopt new tools in general, not just Airtable. But so I don't know, any thoughts on best practices for getting people to adopt?
Well, I don't know. It depends on the type of project. I find it's obviously easier to get adoption if you have a smaller set of users who are supposed to use it. But if you have a large team, a lot of different people, a lot of different roles, sometimes it's good to just have as many people as you can in a room and sort of ask pointedly, what do you want out of this project up at the front, so that things aren't missed out by the time you're ready to deliver.
Yeah.
For us, we try to actually keep people out of Airtable and get them into Stacker. So there's a lot in Airtable. It can be confusing. So we try to make those custom front ends with something like Stacker to make it really simple. And then we create dashboard pages that bring in all the related records to that user. So like they're only seeing what is specific to them rather than everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's similar with some of the new advancements in the interface builder. That's common as well. It's a kind of a pain to manage, because you can hide pages for certain people, but now you've got to keep track of that. But it is doable. And we highly recommend doing that. It takes effort to do, but having interface pages specific to roles or types of users, so they only see what's relevant to them. Yeah, that's a big piece of it. So, all right, I think that wraps up are around the bases, and now you are up to date on Airtable. So let's move on. If you are running your business in Airtable and you are dependent on that data, best practice is to make sure that data is available outside of Airtable. As a backup solution, OnToAir is focused entirely on Airtable, and it is your preferred source, our preferred source, and we're the team behind OnToAir. So we highly recommend you check out ontoair.com, and you can use promo code BuiltOnAir to get a discount for your first month. So check it out, ontoair.com, and start backing up and have peace of mind that your data is stored outside of Airtable, with restore functionality coming very soon. Okay, let's move on. Joseph, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you're up to, what your company does, and then how you came into this world of Airtable.
Yeah. So where should I start? Okay, let's start with what I do in the company. I'm the CEO at A2J Tech, and A2J Tech is a company that works to improve access to justice. So that's what A2J means, is access to justice. And what we do is we help low-income people get legal help. So the legal system shouldn't just be for people who have a lot of money and can afford a lawyer. It's supposed to be justice for all. So what we do is we build tools and systems and work with many organizations to improve access to justice through better technology. So our client base is typically nonprofit legal aid organizations, courts, law firms, and other legal technology companies. We have a team of currently about 12 people.
What's your background? How did you get into this?
Oh, and I forgot. I saw last week. No Code Ops was acquired by Zapier. So just a shout out to Phil and the team there. And Phil hooked me up with a sweatshirt when I was at the No Code conference in Paris last year. So
you can go to Paris, but not New York.
I know, right? Good
Wait
point.
a minute.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay, kind of funny how I got started with Airtable. All right, so I was on this webinar that I really didn't want to be on, and I was just listening to it, and somebody, and this was in 2017, okay, and someone mentioned Airtable, and so I thought, oh, I'll just look this up, and that was I was hooked. I was like, the rest of my life since then has been Airtable. So
were you already running A2J at that point?
At that time, I was working for the Florida Justice Technology Center. Okay. So that's an organization that did at the time, they're no longer in existence, but they worked on technology projects for the Florida legal aid community. And that's where I learned about this field, and the work I could do is by building projects for them and then going to conferences and talking about it and having people from other states say, oh, we would like the same thing in our state. So I realized, oh, I could develop a business to serve the needs of the nonprofit community for technology projects.
Gotcha. So what year did you go off on your own?
I think we started A2J Tech in 2018 or 2019.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Cool.
So our team does a lot with Airtable. One of the main things is portals, such as with Stacker, Softer, NoLoco, Pori, etc. And then we build a number of intake systems. So for nonprofits, intake is a huge deal because you have people looking for those services, and you want to have a good system to do that. And then in the legal space, it's even more involved with conflict checking and making sure you're not representing the opposing party. And then document automation would be, I think, the third component to that. And so we've done a lot of work where we're using Airtable data to then populate documents. Our main tool we use for that is probably FormStack. You can do it 100 ways, but so far FormStack has given us the most functionality for what we do there. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
What's been the reception of your client base to, I guess they're mostly interacting with Stacker. What's been the response to Airtable and Stacker?
Yeah. They love it. They feel like it gives them what they need. And then for us as developers, we feel like between a portal and then the Airtable data, we have all the tools we need. So I'm trying to think of a situation where we couldn't do what we were asked, and I can't think of one currently. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so we feel like in general we between Airtable and the portals, we can build anything. So and I think that's largely because of APIs. So like in other words, when we build something on Stacker for someone, they could say, oh, can it integrate with this? Can it integrate? Well, like, yeah, because Airtable can integrate with anything. You know, your portal can integrate with anything. So
yeah, cool. Favorite feature functionality of Airtable?
Favorite? That's a tough one. Yeah, I think the simplicity of creating relational databases is the biggest thing, and that's I like want to create a course just on that aspect of it. And one of the reasons for that is our client base often uses spreadsheets. So it's so if I could find a way to articulate why a simple relational database is better, and I think they would do it, but it's hard to explain how that works and have them comfortable with that, you know, in a succinct way. So I'm always trying to articulate that, and so rather than having 20 or more different spreadsheets that have common elements, just have one Airtable base, and now everything is going to be accurate and updated when you just update something in one place. So yeah, so I think that like to me the relational database aspect and the simplicity of it brings a ton of power for nonprofit legal services organizations. So
that really is the secret sauce that Airtable unlocked right there. Yeah. What biggest wish list item feature that you wish they would add?
There's one coming up that I've been thinking about. That's updating linked records through, and I'll talk about it with my demo, updating linked records through a sync table.
Yep. Same.
Yeah,
any minute now.
I saw that. I got the notice. They said in August, I think.
Yeah.
So I was like, ooh.
Originally, they said this Thursday, and now I'm upset.
Oh. Good to know. Yeah. So it gets to the topic I'm going to talk about today is or I guess that would be maybe that I should have said that first. The 50 limit on automations. So for these portals that have a lot going on, that 50 limit is not working. And so that's why I had to develop this other solution I'll talk about today.
Yep. Very cool. All right. Why don't we get ready for that? So yeah, you're going to give us highlights into, will it be using this Justice Passport?
I'm actually, it's part of it. That's one of the bigger ones I built. I'm also going to show this California Pro Bono portal. And the reason that is that particular platform has more like general information I can show, whereas the Maryland Just Passport is more client specific. In other words, like actual people seeking legal help, whereas the California Pro Bono portal is volunteer opportunities.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, if you want to share your screen.
Okay, great.
And we'll dive into that.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm excited. So this is a cool
click on present, share screen.
More kind of advanced use case that we haven't dove into.
Entire screen. Share. Okay. And I'm going to go into. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Once you move it off, it's still. There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So I'll start out here and show you like one of the portals that we've built, and I'll show it to you as just like a test user, for example. Okay. So here's what I'm talking about, in which someone can volunteer. So this is typically paralegals, attorneys, can be other people that are other legal professionals as well. And they can go into this portal and they can filter by many different attributes, and they can choose to volunteer on some type of legal issue or clinic. So the Stay Housed LA Tenants' Rights Clinic, help educate tenants on their rights and how to enforce them, time, lots of details. And then if you click on one of these linked records, it's going to take you to more of that thing. So here I click on practice area housing. Now I'm going to see more housing type of opportunities. So if that's an area of law that I'm interested in, I can do that. And then I can go and click expressed interest. And I haven't done that yet. So I'll click add new, click save, and then I've expressed. I'm not going to do it because it will send an email to the organization, and I can submit interest in the opportunity. All right, so with these portal type applications, there's a lot going on, and so you can't do it with the 50 automations. So I had to figure out a way that I could build out more functionality and have more than 50. And I actually sent a message to the BuiltOnAir Slack and said, all right, who's figured out how to do this? And what a few people said is contact Airtable to ask for more automations. And we're on the business plan. And so I did that, and they said no. So I was like, okay, back to the next option. And so you could, of course, use Meg, Zapier, other automation tools. But I would say that the drawback to that is it doesn't have the same functionality as the Airtable automations, and then it's a different environment. So you have to. It's not as easy to work with, in my viewpoint, as the Airtable automations. So I had an idea. What if I created a table that is just for more automation? So I'm going to sync that data to another table and then run more automations for there. And then in theory, I could have as many automations as I wanted. And so that's a little bit true. And so I'll go through, I put some slides together just to show everyone a little bit how this works. And I'll go through the process here. So here's my very long title to this very short slide deck: setting up an automations base when you need more than 50 automations. Okay. First thing, and a little bit we talked about what those limitations is, you can't create records in the target table. So actually, for these portal applications that have a lot going on, I'll set up a table called automations management. And then what I do is I track the attributes, and some things can't be done in that synced table. So I'll mark that. For example, updates a linked record. I can't do that. So that tells me, okay, that's not a good one, not a good candidate to move to the automations base. The find records action, those can be a bit more complex. So I try to do those in the source table rather than the target table. So it's just an example of how I keep track of the attributes of the automation. And then I may say like, oh, this is a candidate to move to the automation space. Okay, let's go back to the slides here. Can't update linked records. That's the feature that Camille said was coming out Thursday, but it looks like it's going to be later than that. Or did you say last Thursday, Camille?
Its original launch date was the 25th of July. It has since been pushed back to August. Okay,
got it. Can't update records in a table that is synced to the source. So it's kind of like the three-way or side chaining. Something is synced to your source, and you need to update that. Well, you can't do it from then a third sync table. And then one of the better pieces of documentation is about their two-way syncing. And I'll show you a little bit. I encourage you to, if you're doing this, to really read it and maybe read it a second time, because in a sense, there are limitations throughout. so there's a section that says limitations, but even when you read through these, you're going to find more limitations. So as I've shown a little bit here, like you just want to make sure that generally with those, and I can go through them, those automations from your automations base, they're on the more simple side, or they're sending emails, updating like a single select field, things that are just, you want your simpler automations to be in the automation space because of all the limitations. And even when you think that you have, okay, you've figured this out, you may even run into another limitation. So here they have this limitation section, and then they have, if I remember right, two-way syncing, and then a whole nother limitation section. So truthfully, there are just a lot, and you have to think it through. Okay, let's go to this next one here. Okay, and this is what Camille and I were talking about. In August, we will expand two-way sync to also allow linked record and collaborator edits to sync back to the initial source of truth table. So, all right, I'll go through this list of setup, and then I'll show you a little bit, but for the sake of time, I won't go through every single step because it would take quite a while. So first one, create a view that will sync to the target base and lock it. So I will, let's just do this real quick. So here are my opportunities, and then I will have probably like sync to automations database, do not change unless I want to change the records or fields that are synced to the automations database. Okay, and here's the data I'm working with, and you could see this same data. So let's go here, let's go back to all opportunities. So here are all these volunteer opportunities, and so here are those with the title and then the status. Okay, so I've got my synced view. I'll create the table. So here I'm going to go into this. This is my automations database, and now I'm syncing these particular fields, and I've got a lot more. Just showing you the ones so you can kind of keep track of the same data across the different pages I'm showing. Okay. Then you're going to create the automation in the sync table. So here's an example of an automation. And let's just read it through here. Opportunity created by, okay. When deadline to express interest has passed, notify the person that created the opportunity. So as a legal services organization, I put in a volunteer opportunity, and I say that people need to express their interest by July 30th. And after July 30th, I'll get an email saying, okay, now the interest period has passed. Now you can reach out to the volunteers, or let's say you didn't get as many volunteers as you wanted, you could repost that opportunity. Okay, so I create the automation. All right, note, and this is a key, maybe I should bold this guy. Okay, note, you'll need to create an automation, such as in Zapier or Make, to wake up the synced base so that it runs the automations. So that was, I remember when I first set this system up, I was so excited, and then the automations didn't run. And it's because you have to wake it up, okay? So the next thing I do, set up tracking in the sync table to track the wake up calls to the sync table. So let's go into that. Okay, so I call it pings. That's my official term for it. So I'll make these different ping types. So I've got ticket created, status linked is updated, role for update is updated, volunteer entity interest approval is updated, so that I can keep track and make sure that the pings are working correctly. And here I've got my pings. So, and actually I meant to use a different view here, demo, just so it doesn't show people's info. So I've got my ping type, so I can track that. So I know, for example, like one is a ticket created, okay, and I have that lookup field. And date and time created, ticket ID, opportunity ID. It's just for tracking purposes. So for example, if someone didn't get an email or something didn't run on time, I could go and look it up and see when did the base get that ping. And essentially, the automation should run right after it gets that ping. So if there's some type of time delay, I could look into that. I haven't had any issues with it. And that's one of the reasons I want to talk about it on the pod here today, is that this is working really well. So it's taken me some time, but I feel like it's a really good solution when you need more than 50 automations. Next one I've got here. Okay, so that's my tracking, is I just set up the reasons and like, okay, every time a ping comes in, I'm gonna track it. And then so in your source, create a last updated field. So this is pretty familiar to most people probably. If you work with Zapier, you need a last updated field in order to monitor that base for any automations, and then set up an automation to create a record in the target base. And that's what I'm doing here, is every time I get a ping, I'm logging it so I can do any investigation I need to. And here in Zapier, so let's just go into this real quick. Okay, so my California Pro Bono Portal database, my opportunities, when the status linked is last modified, and I've got that's my trigger here. I can do my test, and let's go ahead and just go to the create record, action, my pings. I know that this particular ping type is number 4 because I'm tracking it. And then I may try to just put a little more information in just to help me if I need to troubleshoot something. Now I've got in other words, I know what the ping was related to and not just that there was one. So easier to troubleshoot. Okay, and there you go. And now you have as many automations as you want, as long as it's not one of the ones in the limitations. So Camille or Dan, any questions on that?
What? I guess just a baseline. If you're using Zapier for some of it, is your reason not to put as many automations in Airtable simplicity, or to reduce cost?
Actually, it's just for simplicity. So let's take an example here. So I find this interface just to be easier to work with than the Zapier interface. So I know I could, and I've done it, and I have both. I have automations in Zapier and then the ones in Airtable. And I find, let's say for example, let's go into this one and go to automations. So let's say I get to a point that I'm over 50. Well, I find it easier to put like this page on a second screen on another monitor, and then just set it up in the automation space, because I can essentially just copy the elements, which it would be great if you could copy an automation, but in terms of between bases. But I find it easier for the logic and everything to just use the Airtable automations rather than doing it in Zapier. Does that make sense, Camille?
Sure.
So.
Yeah, and then talking about the need for the ping.
Yep.
So that basically, what have you found as far as like, basically if there's no data being updated, that's why you have to ping? Do you have a good sense of like how much time has to pass, or parameters are?
Yeah, so it's just that a synced base, if you're just pushing records into it from the source table, it essentially is asleep, and like nothing you can do will wake it up except for an API call. So you have to somehow push data into it that's not like the synced data, it's from some other system, and then it does it almost immediately.
Gotcha.
So let's take an example here. Let's say the person in Stacker, so let's go in here, and let's actually go to, I'll be like Jenny, who's a common user. Okay. Okay, let's go to, let's refresh this. There we go. Okay, I could go in, and this is some of this. but I could go in and I could put a ticket in, and then it's going to send an API call through Zapier. It's going to send into here and say a ticket was created. Then this automation is going to send me an email saying there was a new ticket. When ticket created, send Joseph and Victoria an email. So, and because this is a simpler one, this is a good candidate for this automation space, whereas the more complex ones I want to do in that source table. And so it all happens within a few minutes, depending on your Zapier plan. But so, and we have the, I don't know, something at a higher level. It's not necessarily enterprise, but a higher level Zapier plan. So that makes sense?
Yep. Yeah. And so it's the fact that now if people were logging in directly into Airtable, even on the source, that would trigger the sync. So the Airtable UI will trigger the sync. It's the fact that you're in Stacker that it's not triggering. Is that correct?
No, it's nope. In other words, so you have your table here, the source table, and your destination table. This thing essentially, unless you have open on your computer, I guess that would be another one. That's what I did at the beginning when I was first doing this. I would keep it open on my computer because that would keep it awake. But
Right,
if the base is closed, okay, in other words, it is like dead to the world. If you don't open it, it won't do the syncing and it won't run the automations.
Right.
So
yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah. So if you're in the Airtable UI, then it will do the sync.
Yeah. On that synced, you have to have that sync table open for it to be awake. Yeah. Sorry about that.
To clarify, we mean a base that's entirely comprised of synced tables, because most of the time people only have like one or two tables and then a series of regular native tables. And so most people aren't going to run into this problem.
Correct. Well, it depends if you have it open or not.
Well, most people are in their Airtable base is what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. This is just if you need more than 50 automations, really.
Yeah.
So,
gotcha.
Which is, I find with the portals and applications, that's where it's like, like organizations will keep asking for functionality and features and all that, which is great. It's just then you get to the 50, you're like, all right, I gotta figure something out.
Yeah.
Automation is one of the weird limits that don't increase based on plan. Like you get more records, you get more attachment space, you get more, in some cases, AI credits, I think now scales with your plan. Automations are locked at 50 for everyone, which is interesting.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Yeah. They can, on certain plans, they will increase the limit for you.
If you ask.
Yes, you do have to ask. It's always a support ticket. They're always going to first tell you, try optimizing your automations. But that's your point. Sometimes you can't optimize because some automations do need to do similar but different things. And there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, that's what people would say too. Say, there's certainly you don't need 50. You can optimize that. I'm like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, with these portals, you can build unlimited features. So there's just so many different things.
You got to start telling your clients no.
Yeah, for sure. So very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for sharing that. And if anybody is in the legal world and needs some help, where can they find you?
Yeah. Go a2jtech.com or Joseph, Joseph at go a2jtech.com. So if you need help with stuff in the legal space, we're happy to help, whether it's portal, just Airtable in general, document automation, things that connect to Airtable. So
cool. Thank you for sharing that, Joseph. Okay, if you are not in the BuiltOnAir community, we highly encourage you and ask you to join us. BuiltOnAir.com/join will get you in our Slack group of thousands of Airtable fans and users talking daily about Airtable. We also, just a shout out, if you are not subscribed to our newsletter, here's just the LinkedIn post of our newsletter. We have a great newsletter going out 1 to 2 times a month and get you a lot of great knowledge, and not just about Airtable, but the no code, low code space in general, keep you sharp with your skill set. So be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. And let's wrap up with charts with Camille. There you go.
Once again, it's time to give a very long explanation about the differences between features that are all within Airtable inside their own product. So recently, there have been some updates to charts that make them a little bit more powerful. You can display things in ways you previously couldn't. But before I get into that, I just want to highlight those are not available on the older style interface pages. We are currently looking at a blank interface page and or a blank template type of an interface page. And if I click on it, you'll see that the options for the charts are the same as they were previously. So I can have an x-axis and a y-axis, and that's about it, really. If I try to modify this, I'm not going to see some of the same settings that I will see if I were to look at, say, a dashboard layout, for instance. Clicking on this chart, you'll notice I have 2 options right off the bat. I now have the ability to have 2 different y-axes. It'll still default to having something on the left, but I now can have an independent y-axis on the right, and you can see this one is giving me the count, and this is giving me the sum. Also, this absolutely crazy line that is the default, but you can change it to like a scatter or another bar chart if you want. I'm going to turn that off because it is going to distract me terribly. But that's one of the biggest changes that was added. Another one that was added to bar charts specifically is if I go into pardon me really quickly. If I go into my y-axis, the one that it starts off with, and I start to group, let's say I group by, I think I want to do major category. I now have the ability to display it as a 100% stacked bar chart. This isn't a great example for that type of chart display, but I can turn it on or off. But it allows you to, previously you could always group by whatever your y-axis was, but now you can display it as 100% stacked bar. If I turn that back on and then try it with the different bar orientation, it also works if you want to go horizontal. And then similarly, it still works no matter where you put your legend, which is nice. So you're now able to have charts that look a little bit closer to what you could do on some other platforms. There's still a few features that I find missing for charts in Airtable interfaces, but when you couple them with things like the drop downs that you could put up at the top, things like that, they start to become much closer to where I wanted them to be quite some time ago. Now we can see if I can try and make this chart look good, which is the thing that I'm worst at.
You're much better than most, Camille.
I don't know. I feel like Allie's the one who's really good at charts on this show. As far as I can tell, well, let's go through the other types of charts. When you first add one to an interface, it's always going to default as bar. You can change it to line, and it looks just as crazy as before, but you can still have multiple y-axes, which is nice. So if you wanted to have 2 lines, you could. If you wanted to have 2 bars, you could. And then I do find this to be a little bit confusing just because the type of chart that's for the first y-axis is controlled by this type up here, but the type of chart for the second y-axis is controlled down here. And I understand why it's there from a UI perspective, because when you go to pi, there is no y-axis. So you want a sort of overall toggle up at the top so you can, select pi as your choice. However, I do think this could be a little bit better. And then it switches to 2 different x-axes if you're on horizontal as your orientation. And then just because we're here, I'll flip through the other charts. So as far as I could tell, pi and donut are the same. I wasn't able to see any additional changes made to it, although I didn't investigate as thoroughly as I did with bars and lines. But as far as I can tell, they operate the same way as they did before with no additional settings. Scatter does work the same way as line and bar because it's basically the same under the hood. It's just they're not drawing the line in between all of these points.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm going to try and play with it a little bit more. I've been avoiding making true dashboards in Airtable for a while. Mostly I'm displaying data in like grids and lists, sometimes galleries, but I'm rarely doing summarizations of data. And this might sway me to try and build what I was envisioning in my head directly in Airtable interfaces. Previously, I think I was leaning more towards doing things in something like NoLoco or Retool, which gives you a little bit more flexibility in how you can display things like this. And I'll go back to a bar because it's more visually interesting.
Did you showcase how you could actually have 2 different fields on the same chart?
I didn't say that aloud, but if you have, if I activate my second axis, and I'll change this to a bar so it looks a little bit less weird, the field can be different. So you can see for the first one, I'm using category as my field. And then for the second one, I'm able to change it to a different field. So if I go back to category, it's going to say, don't do that because it's already on there twice. But if I change it to, sorry, I broke it. If I change it to account, for instance, I don't know where it is. Did I actually break it? Maybe it was there and just not obvious. Nope.
Yeah, looking at from Alex, what he posted in the BuiltOnAir thread about this. Where is it? He has it on the x-axis. It will actually say fields instead of field. So it allows for more than one field. I don't know what settings you have to do. So one field. If you click on the icon, does it give you a different menu?
Where? This here?
Yeah. Or that just brings up up?
No, it brings up the same.
There you go. Fields. So there you could do fields.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. So there's a lot of places that you should go if you want to see things. So the first selection for a field is under, I'll go to vertical because this is how charts start off. Under x-axis, the first place that you can select a field is here under category. So that's how the chart started off. And if you go under x-axis left, I can have multiple different fields. Clicking there, let's say, let's do distinct. We'll start making as many different adjustments as I can. So this, I feel, is going to get real confusing real fast, but it is nice that you're able to have multiple different fields represented on the same chart. Now, I don't believe that you can have fine control over each field based on color. So I'm not seeing the ability to adjust if I want this field represented in blue and then this one represented in green. I'm not able to make that adjustment. I can only control the color palette overall, which is okay. but I think it would be more helpful if I had that fine control. And then the last place that you could choose a field is on your secondary y-axis, and that is where you could have it start to display as a different type of chart. So right now, if I turn this off, I have less things to look at. Everything is represented as the same type of bar. So there's a lot going on in these charts now.
Gotcha.
I was excited by that. I think Russell showed a trend line or something.
Yeah, so that's what if I did show on the x-axis right or y-axis right and had it as a type of line and then picked something that would look less insane, maybe transaction date. Nope, that's even worse. But someone who is better at charts would be able to have that line say something meaningful.
This is more realistic. This is what our data usually looks like.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Thank you, Camille, for sharing that insight. So yeah, show us your pretty charts if you've got one. And with that, that concludes this week's episode. We are off for next week for a mid-season break. I will be off the grid next week, so not available. But we'll be back in 2 weeks for episode 5 of season 19. So thank you, Joseph, for joining, and Camille, and we will see everybody in 2 weeks.
Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, OntoAir Backups, automated backups for Airtable. We'll see you next time on the Built on Air podcast.